Uncover Poirot's Secrets, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot reveals thrilling mysteries. In the fog-shrouded halls of Blackthorn Manor, a scream pierces the night. Eleanor Ashbourne, the delicate heiress, lies dead, a dagger in her heart. Was it her charming fiancé hiding a dark secret? Her estranged brother burning with jealousy? Or a trusted friend weaving a web of betrayal? As shadows conceal the truth, only one man can unravel the mystery: Hercule Poirot. Who killed Eleanor, and what secrets did she uncover that led to her murder? Step into a world of suspense, where every clue hides a lie, and every answer sparks a new question. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackthorn Manor. In the autumn of 1929, the mist hung low over the rolling hills of Devon, cloaking the world in a veil of secrets. Blackthorn Manor, a sprawling Elizabethan estate, stood sentinel atop a rise, its ivy-clad walls and leaded windows gleaming dully under the gray October sky. The manor, owned by the wealthy and reclusive Sir Reginald Ashbourne, was a place of whispered legend, its history steeped in tales of lost love and hidden fortunes. Tonight, it was to be the stage for a gathering that promised both elegance and unease. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion of Hercule Poirot, sat in the drawing-room of their London flat, a letter in his hand. The paper, thick and cream-colored, bore the Ashbourne crest, a rampant stag beneath a crown of thorns. Hastings, his honest face creased with curiosity, read aloud to Poirot, who reclined in an armchair, his small, neat hands folded over his waistcoat. "My dear Captain Hastings," he began, his voice tinged with excitement, "you are cordially invited to Blackthorn Manor for a weekend of celebration, in honor of my daughter Eleanor's engagement to Mr. Victor Langston. Your presence and that of your esteemed friend, Monsieur Hercule Poirot, would do us great honor. I trust you will join us on the 15th of October. Yours sincerely, Sir Reginald Ashbourne." Poirot's eyes, sharp and green as a cat's, flickered with interest. "Mon cher Hastings, an invitation to a grand estate, and in such mysterious tones. This Sir Reginald, he does not merely invite, he summons. And why, I wonder, does he include moi, Hercule Poirot, whom he has never met?" Hastings chuckled. "Perhaps he's heard of your reputation, old boy. You're not exactly an unknown quantity these days." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of both pride and amusement. "Peut-être, but there is something in this invitation, Hastings. A note beneath the words. A weekend of celebration, yes, but why the urgency? Why the mention of moi?" "Do you know of this, Sir Reginald?" "Not much," Hastings admitted. "He's a widower, frightfully rich, made his fortune in shipping. His daughter, Eleanor, is said to be a beauty, though I've heard she's rather delicate. The fiancé, Victor Langston, is a bit of a mystery, some sort of financier, I believe. There's also a younger son, Lionel, who's been abroad for years. The rest, I suppose, will meet when we arrive. Bon. And the manor itself?" "Old as the hills," Hastings said. "Been in the family for centuries. They say it's got secret passages and all sorts of queer stories attached to it." Poirot's lips curved. "Secret passages, mon ami? How delightfully theatrical. But it is not passages that interest Poirot. It is the secrets of the heart." They arrived at Blackthorn Manor as dusk fell, the air sharp with the scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. The manor loomed before them, its stone facade both grand and forbidding. A butler, stern-faced and silent, led them through a cavernous hall adorned with portraits of stern Ashbournes, their eyes seeming to follow the newcomers. In the drawing room, a fire crackled, casting shadows over a gathering of guests who turned as one to greet them. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a tall man with a hawkish face and silver hair, stepped forward. "Captain Hastings, Monsieur Poirot, welcome. Your presence honors us." Poirot bowed, his movements precise. "The honor is mine, Sir Reginald. Blackthorn Manor is a place of great beauty, and I am eager to make the acquaintance of your guests." The introductions were made with the stiff politeness of the English upper class. Eleanor Ashbourne, pale and ethereal, stood beside Victor Langston, a handsome man with sharp features and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Lionel Ashbourne, the prodigal son, was a lean, tanned figure with a restless energy. There was also Mrs. Clara Whitmore, Sir Reginald's widowed sister-in-law, her face a mask of quiet grief. Dr. Hugh Baxter, the family physician, with a nervous habit of adjusting his spectacles, and Miss Sylvia Trent, Eleanor's childhood friend, whose bright chatter seemed forced. Rounding out the party was Mr. Gerald Norton, a solicitor with a dry manner and watchful eyes. Dinner was a sumptuous affair, served in a dining room lit by chandeliers. The conversation flowed, but beneath the pleasantries, Hastings sensed a current of tension. Eleanor spoke little, her gaze often drifting to the window as if seeking escape. Victor, by contrast, was voluble, his anecdotes of London life met with polite laughter. Lionel, newly returned from South America, recounted tales of adventure that seemed to irritate his father. Mrs. Whitmore's hands trembled as she lifted her wine glass, and Dr. Baxter's eyes darted nervously between his fellow. Eyes moved from face to face, noting the flicker of a glance, the tightening of a jaw. Hastings, accustomed to his friend's methods, knew that Poirot was already cataloging details that to others might seem insignificant, but to Poirot were the threads of a tapestry yet to be woven. As dessert was served, Sir Reginald rose, glass in hand. "A toast," he declared, "to my daughter Eleanor and her fiancé, Victor. May their future be as bright as this evening." The guests raised their glasses, but the clink of crystal was interrupted by a sharp cry. Eleanor, her face ashen, had dropped her glass, the red wine spreading like blood across the tablecloth. I'm sorry," she stammered, rising. "I feel unwell." Victor was at her side in an instant, his arm around her. "My dear, you must rest," he said, his tone solicitous, but his eyes cold. Dr. Baxter hurried to assist, and the party dispersed in a murmur of concern. Hastings glanced at Poirot, who remained seated, his fingers steepled. "What do you make of that, Poirot?" he whispered. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A performance, perhaps, mon ami. Or perhaps a truth revealed too soon. The little gray cells, they are already at work." The night deepened, and Blackthorn Manor seemed to hold its breath. In his room, Hastings lay awake, the creak of ancient timbers and the distant hoot of an owl keeping sleep at bay. He thought of Eleanor's pale face, of Victor's calculating gaze, of the unspoken tensions that had hung over the dinner table. Something was amiss, he was certain. But what? In the room next door, Poirot sat at a small desk, a single candle casting shadows across his notebook. He wrote with precision, listing names, times, and observations. A dropped glass, a trembling hand, a glance too long held. These were the pieces of the puzzle. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the truth, knew that the puzzle was far from complete. As the clock struck midnight, a scream tore through the manor, sharp and chilling. Hastings bolted upright, his heart pounding. Poirot, already at the door, turned to him, his face grave. "Vite, Hastings," he said. "The game, it has begun." The corridor was alive with movement. Guests in nightclothes, servants with candles, all drawn to the source of the scream. It had come from Eleanor's room. The door stood ajar, and inside the scene was one of horror. Eleanor Ashbourne lay on the floor, her nightgown stained with blood, a dagger protruding. The smear of blood on the carpet, the open window letting in the chill night air. Hastings, his stomach churning, whispered, "Poirot, who could have done this?" Poirot's gaze met his, steady and unyielding. "That, mon ami, is what we shall discover. The little gray cells, they will not rest until the truth is known." And so, the stage was set. Blackthorn Manor, with its secrets and shadows, had become a battlefield of wits. And Hercule Poirot, the master of deduction, was ready to unravel its mysteries. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Murder. The air in Blackthorn Manor was thick with shock as the guests and servants gathered in the corridor outside Eleanor Ashbourne's room. The scream that had pierced the night still seemed to echo, a ghostly reminder of the horror within. Eleanor lay dead, her delicate form crumpled on the floor. The dagger in her chest a brutal punctuation to the evening's earlier civility. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm amid the chaos, stood at the center of the scene, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. Captain Hastings, standing just behind him, felt a chill that had little to do with the open window. The sight of Eleanor's lifeless body, her pale face frozen in a moment of terror, was a stark contrast to the vibrant young woman who had sat at dinner only hours before. "Poirot," he whispered, "this is monstrous. Who could do such a thing?" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Patience, mon ami. The truth, it hides in the details, and we must not rush to judgment." He turned to the assembled group, his voice steady and commanding. "Messieurs, mesdames, I ask that you return to your rooms. The police will be summoned, but until they arrive, Hercule Poirot will ensure that nothing is disturbed. S'il vous plaît, go now." The guests, pale and shaken, obeyed, though their eyes lingered on the scene. Victor Langston, still kneeling beside Eleanor, was gently pulled away by Dr. Hugh Baxter, whose hands trembled as he muttered something about shock. Sir Reginald Ashbourne stood frozen, his hawkish face drained of color, while Mrs. Clara Whitmore clutched a handkerchief to her mouth, stifling a sob. Lionel Ashbourne, his tanned face taut, cast a glance at the window before turning away. Sylvia Trent, her earlier vivacity extinguished, clung to Gerald Norton, the solicitor, who guided her out with a grim expression. Poirot closed the door to Eleanor's room, leaving only himself, Hastings, and the butler, Mr. Grayson, inside. "Grayson," Poirot said, "you will stand guard here. No one enters, comprenez-vous?" The butler, ugliness Hastings, peered over his shoulder. "Looks like something from a collection, doesn't it? Perhaps it's from the manor itself." "Précisément, Hastings. And that is a clue in itself. We must learn where this dagger belongs." Poirot's eyes moved to the open window, where a faint breeze stirred the curtains. He crossed the room, his patent leather shoes silent on the carpet, and examined the sill. A faint smudge of mud caught his attention, and he leaned closer, his mustache twitching. "Voyez-vous, Hastings? A mark. Someone has been here, perhaps entering, perhaps leaving." An intruder? Hastings asked, his mind racing. But the manor is so remote. Surely it was someone inside. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We shall see, mon ami. The little gray cells. They are already at work. The police arrived within the hour, led by Inspector Japp, a familiar figure whose brisk manner contrasted with Poirot's measured calm. Japp, his coat dusted with rain, surveyed the scene with a practiced eye. Well, Poirot, you've landed in it again, haven't you? What's the story here? Poirot recounted the events briefly, his tone clipped and precise. Miss Eleanor Ashbourne, engaged to Mr. Victor Langston, was found dead at midnight, stabbed with a dagger. The window was open, and there is a mark on the sill. The guests were all in their rooms, or so they claim. I have ensured the scene remains untouched. Japp nodded, his pencil scribbling in a notebook. Right. We'll need statements from everyone. And you, Poirot, keep out of trouble, eh? Though I know that's asking the impossible. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Trouble, Inspector, is where the truth hides. And Hercule Poirot, he will find it. The rest of the night passed in a blur of activity. The police cordoned off Eleanor's room, and a doctor confirmed what was already clear. Death by a single stab wound to the heart, delivered with force and precision. The dagger was removed for examination, and the guests were summoned to the drawing room for questioning. Poirot, however, requested a moment to inspect the manor. With Hastings at his side, he moved through the dimly lit corridors, his eyes noting every detail, the creak of a floorboard, the placement of a vase, the faint scent of lavender in the air. In the library, he paused before a glass case containing a collection of antique weapons, including several daggers. One slot was conspicuously empty. Voila, Poirot said, pointing to the case. The dagger, it came from here. This is no random act, Hastings. The killer chose this weapon with care. But why? Hastings asked. If it's from the manor, it to one side. His notebook open, his pen moving with meticulous care. Each guest was questioned in turn, their alibis recorded, with timestamps that Poirot scrutinized closely. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, his voice hoarse with grief, claimed to have been in his study until 11:30, reviewing estate accounts. He had heard nothing until the scream. Eleanor was my light, he said, his eyes distant. Who would do this to her? Victor Langston, his charm replaced by a haggard intensity, said he had retired to his room at 11, alone. I was writing letters, he said. I heard the scream and ran to her room. I found her. Like that. His voice broke, but Poirot noted the way his hands clenched, as if holding back more than grief. Lionel Ashbourne, restless and defensive, said he had been in the billiard room, smoking and reading, until just before midnight. I didn't hear anything until the scream, he said, his eyes avoiding his father's. Poirot marked the slight tremor in his voice. Mrs. Clara Whitmore, her face pale beneath her mourning black, said she had taken a sleeping draught and gone to bed at 10. I woke only when I heard the scream, she whispered. Poor Eleanor. She was like a daughter to me. Dr. Hugh Baxter, fidgeting with his spectacles, claimed to have been in his room, reading medical journals, until the scream roused him. I tried to help, but it was too late, he said, his voice unsteady. Sylvia Trent, her eyes red from crying, said she had been in her room, writing in her diary, until the scream. Eleanor was my dearest friend, she said. I can't believe she's gone. Gerald Norton, the solicitor, was the most composed, stating he had been in his room reviewing legal documents until the scream. "A tragedy," he said, his tone measured. "But I heard nothing beforehand. Each alibi was plausible. Yet Poirot's pen paused over certain details, a hesitation in Lionel's account, a too-quick response from Victor, the way Mrs. Whitmore's hands twisted her handkerchief. Hastings, watching his friend, knew that these small inconsistencies were the threads Poirot would weave into truth. As the interviews concluded, Japp turned to Poirot. "Well, what do you make of it? Seems like a locked room mystery to me. Window open but no clear footprints outside. That dagger's the key, I reckon." Poirot nodded. "The dagger, yes, but also the heart. Why Eleanor? Why now? These are the questions, Inspector. And Hercule Poirot, he will find the answers." Frame. This window. It was opened from the outside, but the mud. It is not enough for a clear footprint. The killer. He is clever, but not clever enough. "What do you mean?" Hastings asked. Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. "The little gray cells, they see what others miss. The mud, the dagger, the scream, these are not accidents. They are the work of a mind that plans, that deceives, and Hercule Poirot, he will not be deceived." As they left the room, the manor seemed to close in around them, its walls whispering of secrets yet to be uncovered. The game, as Poirot had said, had begun, and it was far from over. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The morning after Eleanor Ashbourne's murder dawned gray and heavy, the mist clinging to Blackthorn Manor like a shroud. The air inside was no less oppressive, with the guests moving about in a daze, their faces etched with grief, fear, or something less easily named. Hercule Poirot, however, was a figure of serene purpose, his immaculate suit and polished shoes a stark contrast to the disarray around him. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, marveled at his friend's composure. While others succumbed to the weight of tragedy, Poirot seemed to thrive in its presence, his little gray cells already piecing together the puzzle. In the drawing room, where the fire had been stoked to ward off the autumn chill, Poirot gathered with Inspector Japp and the manor's inhabitants. The police had completed their initial sweep of Eleanor's room, and the body had been removed for examination, leaving behind an eerie silence. Japp, his notebook in hand, addressed the group with his usual brisk efficiency. "We're treating this as a murder investigation," he said, his voice carrying the authority of Scotland Yard. "No one is to leave the manor until we've completed our inquiries. Monsieur Poirot here has kindly offered his assistance, and I expect you all to cooperate." A murmur rippled through the room, but no one protested. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, seated in a high-backed chair, looked as though he had aged a decade overnight, his eyes hollow. Victor Langston, his face pale but composed, stood by the window, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Lionel Ashbourne paced near the fireplace, his restless energy barely contained. Mrs. Clara Whitmore, her mourning black now seeming all too apt, sat with her hands folded, her gaze distant. Dr. Hugh Baxter adjusted his spectacles nervously, while Sylvia Trent dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Gerald Norton, the solicitor, maintained his air of detached professionalism, though his eyes flicked to Poirot with wary interest. Poirot stepped forward, his small stature somehow commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," detail. A word, a glance, a moment, may hold the key to justice for Mademoiselle Eleanor Hastings. Standing near the door, noted the reactions. Victor's jaw tightened. Lionel stopped pacing, and Sylvia's handkerchief paused mid-dab. Poirot's words, though gentle, carried a weight that seemed to unsettle them all. Japp cleared his throat. Right then. We've got the preliminary report. The dagger was from the library collection, as Monsieur Poirot suspected. No fingerprints, though, wiped clean. The wound suggests a strong, deliberate thrust. Time of death is estimated at midnight, give or take a few minutes. The scream woke the house, so we're working on the assumption the killer acted just before. Now, let's go over your movements again, starting with you, Sir Reginald. Poirot raised a hand. Pardon, Inspector, but allow me to suggest a different approach. The alibis, they are important, oui, but they are only part of the picture. I wish to understand the people. Tell me, Sir Reginald, about your daughter. What was her state of mind in the days before this tragedy? Sir Reginald's eyes widened, then softened with pain. Eleanor was delicate, he said slowly. She had always been frail, prone to melancholy since her mother's death 10 years ago. But she was happy about her engagement to Victor. Or so I thought. His voice faltered and he looked away. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And you, Mr. Langston? You were to marry Mademoiselle Eleanor. Did she share her heart with you? Victor turned from the window, his face a mask of controlled grief. Eleanor was reserved, but she loved me. We spoke of our future often. She was nervous about the wedding, perhaps, but nothing unusual. I can't imagine why anyone would harm her. Poirot's eyes lingered on him, noting the slight tremor in his voice. Merci. And you, Mr. Lionel Ashbourne? You have been away for many years. What was your relationship with your sister? Lionel's pacing resumed, his hands thrust into his pockets. We were close as children, but I've been abroad for a decade. I only returned last month. Eleanor seemed distant. I thought it was the engagement, or perhaps her health. I didn't press her. His tone was clipped, almost defensive. Mrs. Whitmore spoke next, unprompted, her voice trembling. Eleanor was like my own child. I loved her dearly. She was troubled, yes, but she never spoke of it. I wish I had asked more. Tears welled in her eyes, and Dr. Baxter handed her a glass of water, his own hands unsteady. Poirot turned to Sylvia Trent, little, confirming their earlier statements about retiring early, and hearing nothing until the scream. Poirot listened, his pen moving swiftly in his notebook, capturing not just their words but their gestures, their hesitations, their glances. After the interviews, Poirot and Hastings withdrew to the library, where the empty dagger case stood as a silent accusation. Poirot examined the case again, his fingers tracing the velvet lining. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing to a faint scratch on the glass. "This case was opened recently, and with care. The lock is intact, but the scratch, it suggests a key, or perhaps a tool." Hastings frowned. "So the killer knew where to find the dagger. That points to someone familiar with the manor. Précisément. But it is not just the dagger, mon ami. It is the why. Why choose such a weapon? Why Eleanor? And why now, on the eve of her engagement celebration?" They were interrupted by Grayson, the butler, who entered with a tray of tea. His face remained impassive, but Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Grayson, you have served the Ashbournes for many years, oui? Did you notice anything unusual about Mademoiselle Eleanor in recent days?" Grayson set the tray down, his movements precise. "Miss Eleanor was quieter than usual, sir. She spent much time in her room, and I overheard her speaking with Mr. Langston in the garden 2 days ago. She seemed agitated. Poirot's mustache twitched. Intéressant. And what did they say? I couldn't hear clearly, sir, but her voice was raised. She mentioned something about not being sure. I thought it best not to intrude. Merci, Grayson. You have been most helpful. As the butler left, Poirot turned to Hastings. A lover's quarrel, perhaps? Or something more? The day wore on, with Poirot moving through the manor like a shadow, his eyes missing nothing. He examined the grounds outside Eleanor's window, finding no clear footprints, but noting the soft earth beneath the ivy. He studied the layout of the manor, sketching a rough map in his notebook, marking the positions of each guest's room relative to Eleanor's. Hastings, trailing behind, felt the weight of the mystery growing heavier. That afternoon, Japp shared the coroner's preliminary findings. The dagger had pierced Eleanor's heart cleanly, suggesting a killer with strength and precision. The window's mud smudge contained traces of garden soil, but no other clues. It's a devil of a case, Poirot, Japp said, rubbing his chin. No fingerprints, no witnesses, and everyone's got an alibi. What do you make of it? Sylvia, her eyes still red, clutched her shawl tightly. Mademoiselle, Poirot began, his tone gentle. You were Eleanor's confidant. If she had a secret, would she have shared it with you? Sylvia hesitated, her fingers twisting the shawl. She did say something odd a week ago. She said she wasn't sure about Victor, that she felt he was hiding something. But when I pressed her, she laughed it off. Poirot nodded, his expression inscrutable. And did you believe her laughter? Sylvia's eyes met his, then dropped. No. She was frightened. I should have done something. As Poirot escorted her back to the drawing room, Hastings whispered, What do you think, Poirot? Is Victor the key? Poirot's smile was faint. The key, mon ami, is not one person but many. Each has a piece of the puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will fit them together. The manor settled into an uneasy silence, the weight of murder pressing down on its ancient walls. Poirot, undeterred, continued his quiet observations, knowing that the truth was there, waiting to be uncovered by his relentless logic. Chapter 4. The Questions Begin. The second day at Blackthorn Manor dawned with a pall of suspicion hanging over its ancient walls. The mist had lifted, but the sky remained overcast, casting a muted light through the leaded windows. The guests, confined to the manor by Inspector Japp's orders, moved with the hesitancy of those who knew they were watched, not just by the police, but by each other. Hercule Poirot, however, was in his element, his precise movements and keen eyes a contrast to the nervous energy around him. Captain Hastings, trailing his friend, felt the tension like a physical weight, each glance and whisper a potential clue in the unraveling mystery of Eleanor Ashbourne's murder. Poirot had requested that the morning be devoted to a series of private interviews, conducted in the manor's oak-paneled study, a room lined with leather-bound books and heavy furniture that seemed to absorb sound. The fire crackled softly, but it did little to warm the atmosphere. Poirot sat behind a polished desk, his notebook open, his pen poised like a surgeon's scalpel. Hastings stood by the window, watching the garden below. where a gardener raked leaves with mechanical precision, oblivious to the drama within. "Mon ami," Poirot said, glancing at Hastings. "Observe the faces, the hands, the eyes. Words, they lie, but the body, it speaks the truth," answered steadily. "We were devoted to each other. Eleanor was nervous about the wedding, as I told you, but that's normal, isn't it? We had no secrets." His voice was firm, but his gaze slid to the side, avoiding Poirot's piercing stare. Poirot's mustache twitched. "No secrets, you say? Yet Mademoiselle Trent mentioned that Eleanor was troubled, that she spoke of doubts about you. What were these doubts, monsieur?" Victor's hands clenched briefly. Sylvia must be mistaken. Eleanor was delicate, prone to moods. If she had doubts, they were fleeting. I reassured her. "Intéressant," Poirot murmured, making a note. "And on the night of the murder, you were in your room writing letters until the scream at midnight. Can anyone confirm this?" Victor shook his head. "I was alone. My room is at the end of the corridor, away from Eleanor's. I heard nothing until the scream." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, monsieur. You may go." Next came Lionel Ashbourne, his lean frame tense as he slumped into the chair. His tanned face was shadowed with exhaustion, and his eyes darted to the door as if expecting an interruption. "Monsieur Lionel," Poirot said, "you have been away from Blackthorn Manor for many years. Why did you return now, so close to your sister's engagement?" Lionel's jaw tightened. "I came to see Eleanor, to reconnect. I'd been in South America, working in mining. I wanted to be here for her happiness." His voice was clipped, almost rehearsed. "And were you happy for her?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. "Or did you disapprove of Monsieur Langston?" Lionel hesitated, his fingers drumming on the armrest. "I didn't know Victor well. He seemed ambitious, but Eleanor loved him, so I kept my thoughts to myself." Poirot's pen scratched softly. "And your movements that night? You were in the billiard room alone until just before midnight?" "Yes," Lionel said quickly. "I was reading, smoking. I didn't hear anything until the scream." "Bon. And the dagger, do you know it? It came from the library collection, a place you must have known as a boy." Lionel's eyes narrowed. "I haven't been in the library since I was a child. I wouldn't know one dagger from another." Poirot smiled faintly. "Merci, monsieur. That will be all for now." Mrs. Clara Whitmore entered next, her black dress rustling softly. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, but she held herself with dignity. "Madame," Poirot said gently, "you loved Mademoiselle Eleanor as a daughter. Did she ever speak to you of fear?" Draft at 10. "You heard nothing until the scream?" "Yes," she whispered. "I wish I had stayed awake. Perhaps I could have saved her." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Merci, madame. Your candor is appreciated." Dr. Hugh Baxter was next, his nervous energy palpable as he adjusted his spectacles repeatedly. "Doctor," Poirot began, "you were Mademoiselle Eleanor's physician. Was she in good health, or was there something that troubled her?" Baxter hesitated, his fingers fidgeting. "She was delicate, as everyone knew. Weak heart, prone to fainting spells. I prescribed tonics, but she was reluctant to take them. She seemed preoccupied lately." "Preoccupied?" Poirot leaned forward. "In what way?" Baxter shrugged, his discomfort evident. "She was quieter, more withdrawn. I thought it was nerves about the wedding. I didn't pry. And your movements that night? Poirot asked. I was in my room, reading medical journals. Baxter said, his voice steady but his eyes avoiding Poirot's. I heard the scream and ran to her room. Poirot made a note, his expression inscrutable. Merci, doctor. Sylvia Trent followed, her vivacity replaced by a fragile air. She sat with her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting to Hastings before settling on Poirot. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, you told me Eleanor was frightened, that she doubted Monsieur Langston. Did she mention anything specific? A name, a letter, a secret? Sylvia's lips trembled. She didn't give details. She just said she wasn't sure she could trust him. I thought it was bridal nerves, but now. She trailed off, tears welling. And your movements that night? Poirot asked. I was in my room, writing in my diary, Sylvia said. I heard the scream and ran out. I didn't see anything until we found her. Poirot nodded, his pen pausing. Merci, mademoiselle. Gerald Norton, the solicitor, was the last, his dry manner unchanged. Monsieur Norton, Poirot said, you are a man of details, of documents. Did Mademoiselle Eleanor discuss her affairs with you? Her engagement, her inheritance? Norton's eyes were steady. I handled the family's legal matters, but Eleanor was not involved in those discussions. Her father managed her trust. She seemed content with her engagement. And your movements? Poirot asked. I was in my room, reviewing papers, Norton said. I heard the scream and joined the others. As Norton left, Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. Eh bien, Hastings, he said. What do you make of these accounts? Hastings frowned, his mind swirling. They all seem plausible, but there's something off. Victor's too smooth, Lionel's too defensive, and Sylvia, well, gray cells. They are beginning to see the shape of it. After the interviews, Poirot requested a tour of the manor's upper floors, accompanied by Grayson, the butler. The corridors were lined with portraits and heavy drapes, the air thick with the scent of old wood and polish. Poirot paused at each door, noting its proximity to Eleanor's room. Victor's was furthest, at the end of the hall. Lionel's was 2 doors down. Mrs. Whitmore's was across the corridor. Baxter's and Sylvia's were adjacent to each other, and Norton's was closest to the stairs. At Eleanor's door, Poirot lingered, examining the lock. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing to a faint scratch near the keyhole. "This lock has been tampered with, but subtly. The killer. He is careful, but not invisible." Downstairs, Poirot requested the manor's guest book, which Grayson provided. The pages revealed no recent visitors, but Poirot's eyes lingered on an entry from a month prior, a Mr. Charles Vane, a business associate of Victor's, who had stayed for a weekend. "Intéressant," Poirot murmured. "We must learn more of this Monsieur Vane." As the day drew to a close, Poirot and Hastings stood in the garden, the wind carrying the faint scent of roses. "What now, Poirot?" Hastings asked. "Everyone's accounted for, but no one's story quite adds up." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The contradictions, mon ami. They are the path to truth. The dagger, the window, the scratch on the lock. These are not accidents. They are the work of a mind that plans, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it." The manor loomed behind them, its secrets locked within its walls. The game, as Poirot had said, was far from over, and the little Belgian detective was only beginning to play. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The third day at Blackthorn Manor brought a restless energy, as if the very walls were impatient for the truth to emerge. The guests, confined by Inspector Japp's orders, moved through the grand rooms with a mix of resignation and unease. their glances sharp with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a figure of serene focus, his meticulous nature undeterred by the mounting tension. Captain Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, felt the weight of the mystery pressing heavier, each new detail a thread in a tapestry that seemed to twist and tangle with every step. The morning began with a discovery that set the manor abuzz. A maid, tidying the conservatory, had found a crumpled letter tucked beneath a potted fern. Inspector Japp, summoned by the butler Grayson, examined. "Poirot," he said, tapping the paper. "This CV could be our man. Sounds like someone warning Eleanor about Langston. And midnight, the time of the murder. Looks like Victor Langston's got some explaining to do." Hastings nodded eagerly. "It's obvious, isn't it? Victor's the prime suspect. The letter suggests Eleanor was having doubts and he's got no alibi. He could have slipped into her room, used the dagger from the library, and staged the open window to throw us off." Poirot's eyes twinkled, but his expression remained grave. "Mon cher Hastings, you leap to conclusions like a hare. The letter, it is indeed significant, but it is too convenient, no? A clue so clear, left where a maid might find it? No, this is a red herring, designed to mislead. Hercule Poirot does not trust what is too easily found." Japp frowned. "You think it's a plant? But who's this CV then? We know a Charles Vane visited a month ago, Langston's associate. Could be him." "Peut-être," Poirot said, taking the letter and examining it closely. The paper was fine, the ink fresh, but the handwriting was unsteady, as if written in haste or agitation. "We must learn more of this, Monsieur Vane. But we must also ask, who benefits from casting suspicion on Victor Langston? The little gray cells, they are not convinced." Determined to test the theory, Japp summoned Victor to the study. The young man entered, his face pale but composed, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease when he saw the letter in Japp's hand. "Mr. Langston," Japp said, his tone sharp. "Care to explain this?" "Found in the conservatory, addressed to your fiancée. Seems she was warned about you." Victor's jaw tightened as he read the letter. "This is nonsense," he said, his voice steady but strained. "I don't know any CV, and Eleanor never mentioned this letter. If she had doubts, she would have told me." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "And yet, monsieur, Mademoiselle Trent says Eleanor was frightened, unsure of you. Perhaps this letter confirms her fears. Tell me, who is Charles Vane?" Victor's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Charles. He's a business acquaintance, nothing more. He visited a month ago to discuss investments. He left after a weekend. I haven't seen him since." "And he had no connection to Mademoiselle Eleanor?" Poirot pressed. "None," Victor said firmly. "If he wrote this, it's news to me. But I swear, I loved Eleanor. I would never harm her." Japp grunted, unconvinced, but Poirot dismissed Victor with a wave. "Merci, monsieur. We will speak again." Silent predator. His eyes missing nothing. He returned to the conservatory where the letter had been found and examined the spot beneath the fern. The earth was undisturbed, but a faint smear of soil on the pot's rim caught his attention. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing. "This soil. It matches the mud on the windowsill in Eleanor's room. Curious, no?" Hastings frowned. "You think the letter was placed here after the murder?" "Peut-être. Or it was meant to be found, to lead us to Victor." The killer, he is clever, but he overreaches. Poirot's next move was to inspect the library again, focusing on the dagger case. He noted the precise arrangement of the remaining weapons, each slot labeled with a small brass plaque. The empty slot, where the murder weapon had rested, bore the inscription, Italian stiletto, 16th century. Poirot's fingers traced the lock, which showed no signs of tampering beyond the faint scratch he had noted earlier. The dagger was chosen with care, he murmured. Not for convenience, but for meaning. We must discover what it signifies. Back in the study, Poirot requested Grayson's assistance. The butler, ever stoic, confirmed that the dagger was part of Sir Reginald's collection, rarely handled except by himself or the family. Miss Eleanor was fond of the library, Grayson added. She often read there, even late at night. Interessant, Poirot said. And did she visit the library on the night of her death? Grayson hesitated. I cannot say, sir. I retired at 10, after ensuring the house was secure. Poirot nodded, dismissing him. To Hastings, he said, the library, it is a nexus. The dagger, the letter, Eleanor's habits. They converge there. As the afternoon waned, Japp shared another piece of evidence. A torn piece of fabric, dark blue and finely woven, found caught on a rosebush beneath Eleanor's window. Could be from the killer's clothing, Japp said. We're checking the guests' wardrobes, but it's a common enough color. Poirot examined the fabric, his eyes narrowing. Common, yes, but specific. The weave. It is expensive, tailored. We must see who owns such a garment. The guests were summoned to the drawing room, where Japp announced the find. Reactions varied. Victor's face remained impassive. Lionel's eyes darted to the door. Mrs. Whitmore clutched her handkerchief. Sylvia gasped softly. Doctor. Baxter adjusted his spectacles, and Norton's expression was unreadable. Poirot, watching closely, noted each thoughts. Sylvia spoke first, her voice trembling. I saw someone in the garden that night, just before midnight. A shadow, moving toward the house. I thought it was a servant, but now, Poirot's eyes gleamed. A shadow, mademoiselle. Describe it. It was dark, she said, faltering. Tall, I think. I couldn't see clearly from my window. The others claimed to have seen nothing, but Poirot noted Lionel's sudden stillness and Victor's clenched fists. The fabric, the letter, Sylvia's shadowy figure. These were the red herrings, designed to distract. But from what? That evening, Poirot and Hastings dined alone in the study, the manor's oppressive atmosphere seeping into their meal. Poirot, Hastings said, this letter and fabric, they point to Victor, but you don't believe it, do you? Poirot sipped his tisane, his eyes distant. The evidence, it is too neat, mon ami. The killer wishes us to chase Victor, to see only the obvious. But Hercule Poirot, he looks beyond. The letter, the fabric, the shadow, they are threads, but not the whole tapestry. As night fell, Poirot stood by the study window, gazing at the garden below. The rose bush, the mud, the manor's looming silhouette. All were pieces of a puzzle he was determined to solve. The little gray cells, they are restless, he murmured. The truth is close, but it hides behind these distractions. We must be patient, Hastings, and we must be precise. The manor settled into an uneasy silence, its secrets locked tighter than ever. But Poirot, undeterred, knew that the red herrings would only lead him closer to the truth, one careful step at a time. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The fourth day at Blackthorn Manor dawned with a brittle clarity, the sun breaking through the clouds to cast long shadows across the estate. The air inside the manor, however, remained heavy with suspicion, each guest moving with the cautious deliberation of those aware they were under scrutiny. Hercule Poirot, his immaculate appearance a stark contrast to the disquiet around him, was relentless in his pursuit of the truth. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, felt the mystery tightening like a noose, each new revelation pulling them closer to an elusive answer. Poirot had spent the previous evening in silent contemplation, his notebook filled with precise diagrams and cryptic notes. Hastings, accustomed to his friend's methods, knew that Poirot was sifting through the tangle of alibis, clues, and red herrings, searching for the one detail that would illuminate the whole. As they breakfasted, Hastings nodded, though his mind was still caught on the letter signed CV and the torn fabric. "Do you still think those are red herrings, Poirot? They seem so damning." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "They are threads, Hastings, but not the whole tapestry. The killer, he wishes us to chase shadows. But Hercule Poirot, he chases the light." Their first task was to revisit Eleanor's room, now sealed by the police, but accessible to Poirot with Inspector Japp's grudging permission. The room was as they had left it, save for the absence of Eleanor's body. The blood-stained carpet, the open window, and the faint scratch on the lock remained, silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot moved with methodical precision, his eyes scanning every surface. He paused at the dressing table, where a silver hairbrush, a bottle of lavender water, and a small jewelry box sat in orderly array. "Regardez, Hastings," Poirot said, lifting the jewelry box. Its lid was inlaid with mother-of-pearl, but a faint crack ran along one edge, as if it had been dropped. Inside, among delicate rings and a pearl necklace, was a single earring, a sapphire teardrop, its mate missing. "This is curious, no? One earring, alone. Where is its partner?" Hastings frowned. Perhaps she lost it. Women do misplace jewelry, don't they? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Not Mademoiselle Eleanor. She was delicate, yes, but precise. This earring, it is a clue. We must find its pair. They searched the room, checking drawers, under the bed, and even the folds of the curtains. But the second earring was nowhere to be found. Poirot, undeterred, turned his attention to the window. The smudge of mud on the sill, now dry, was still visible, and he examined it closely, noting a faint glitter embedded in the soil. "Voyez-vous, Hastings?" he said, using a handkerchief to collect a speck of what appeared to be metallic dust. "This is not ordinary mud. It sparkles, like mica or perhaps something more." Hastings peered at it. Could it be from the garden? Or something the killer brought in? Précisément. We must compare this to the soil outside, but also to other places in the manor. The killer, he leaves traces, no matter how careful. Leaving the room, Poirot requested a meeting with Grayson, the butler, in the library. The stern-faced man arrived promptly, his demeanor as impeccable as ever. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot began, "you mentioned that Mademoiselle Eleanor spent much time in the library. Did she ever handle the dagger collection?" Grayson's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. "Not to my knowledge, sir. The collection is deaf." Grayson hesitated, then said, "2 days before, I found the library door ajar when I came to lock up for the night. I thought it was an oversight, but now..." Poirot's mustache twitched. Merci, Grayson. Your observation is most valuable. After the butler left, Poirot examined the library's bookshelves, his fingers trailing over the spines. He paused at a volume of Keats, slightly askew, and pulled it out. Tucked between its pages was a folded piece of paper, a receipt from a London jeweler, dated a month prior, for the repair of a sapphire earring. "Eh bien," Poirot murmured, showing it to Hastings. "The missing earring. It was sent for repair." But why only one, and why was this receipt hidden here? Hastings' eyes widened. "You think Eleanor hid it? But why?" "Perhaps to protect someone," Poirot said, "or to conceal a secret." We must learn more. Their next stop was the garden, where Poirot examined the rose bush where the torn fabric had been found. The earth beneath was soft, matching the mud on the windowsill, but Poirot's attention was drawn to a faint indentation in the soil, a partial footprint, too small to be conclusive, but suggesting a light step. He collected a sample of the soil, noting its faint shimmer, similar to the mud in Eleanor's room. "This glitter," he said, "it is not natural to this garden. It is foreign, brought here by the killer." Back inside, Poirot requested a private word with Sylvia Trent, whose nervous demeanor had caught his attention. They met in the conservatory, where the air was thick with the scent of hothouse flowers. Sylvia sat on a wicker chair, her hands twisting her shawl. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you saw a shadow in the garden before midnight. Can you recall any detail, a color, a shape?" Sylvia's eyes darted away. "It was dark, Monsieur Poirot. I only saw a figure, tall and thin, moving toward the house. I thought it was a servant, but now I'm not sure." "And this earring," Poirot said, producing a sketch of the sapphire teardrop. "Did Mademoiselle Eleanor wear such a pair recently?" Sylvia's face paled. "Yes, she wore them often. They were a gift from her mother. But I noticed one was missing a few weeks ago. She said it was being repaired." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful." As Sylvia left, Hastings whispered, "The earring, the receipt, the glitter in the mud. What does it mean, Poirot?" "It means, mon ami, that the killer has made a mistake. The earring, it was not lost by accident. It was taken, or left, as part of the crime. And the glitter." Garden, Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Intéressant. This pigment, it narrows our field. We must check the possessions of our suspects, paints, powders, anything that might carry such a trace." The day ended with Poirot sketching a timeline in his notebook, marking the alibis against the midnight scream. Victor's letters, Lionel's reading, Clara's sleeping draft, Baxter's journals, Sylvia's diary, Norton's documents, all seemed solid. Yet the earring, the receipt, and the glitter suggested a hidden truth. Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. "The detail, Hastings. It is the key." The killer thinks he has hidden his tracks, but he has left a trail of crumbs, and Hercule Poirot will follow them. As night fell, the manor seemed to hold its breath, its secrets locked within its walls. Poirot, undaunted, knew that the clue and detail, the earring, the glitter, the receipt, was the thread that would unravel the mystery. The game was advancing, and he was ready for the next move. Chapter 7. More lies surface. The fifth day at Blackthorn Manor unfolded under a sky heavy with impending rain, the clouds mirroring the darkening mood within the estate's ancient walls. The guests, confined by the ongoing investigation, moved with a strained civility, their conversations clipped, and their glances laden with unspoken accusations. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous demeanor unshaken, seemed to thrive in this atmosphere of suspicion, his little gray cells weaving connections where others saw only chaos. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, felt the mystery growing denser, each new revelation adding layers to an already intricate puzzle. Poirot began the day in the library, where the empty dagger case and the hidden receipt for the sapphire earring had already provided crucial threads. He stood before the bookshelves, his eyes scanning the titles, when a faint irregularity caught his attention. A book on botany, slightly misaligned, its spine protruding just enough to suggest disturbance. He pulled it out, revealing a small, folded letter tucked behind it. The paper was plain, unlike the fine stationery of the CV letter, and bore a single line in a hurried script. "I know what you did. Tell the truth, or I will." "Eh bien," Poirot murmured, showing the note to Hastings. "Another secret, hidden in plain sight. This manor, it is a treasure trove of whispers." Hastings frowned, his mind racing. "Who wrote this, Poirot? And to whom? It could be about anything, business, a quarrel, or the murder." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Précisément, mon ami. But it is not the what that matters yet, it is the why. This note, it was meant of the maids found it in a cupboard," Jap said, holding it up. "Could be nothing, but Mrs. Whitmore mentioned taking a sleeping draught the night of the murder. If this is hers, why was it hidden?" Poirot examined the vial, noting its plain glass and lack of markings. "Intéressant. We must ask Madame Whitmore, but discreetly. The sleeping draught, it may explain why she heard nothing, or it may hide a deeper truth." Determined to probe further, Poirot requested a meeting with Mrs. Clara Whitmore in the conservatory, where the scent of damp earth and roses provided a stark contrast to the grim task at hand. Clara entered, her black dress rustling, her face pale but composed. She clutched her handkerchief, a gesture Hastings had come to recognize as a shield against scrutiny. "Madame," Poirot began, his tone gentle but firm. "You spoke of taking a sleeping draught the night of Mademoiselle Eleanor's death. This vial, was it yours?" He held it up, watching her closely. Clara's eyes widened, then narrowed. I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "I keep my draught in my room, in a labeled bottle. That one looks different." "And yet," Poirot pressed, "it was found in the servants' quarters. Did you perhaps misplace it, or give it to someone?" "No." Clara's voice rose, then softened. "I took my usual dose at 10 and went to bed. I heard nothing until the scream. I swear it." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, madame. And one more thing. Did Mademoiselle Eleanor ever speak of a secret, something she feared might come to light?" Clara's hands twisted her handkerchief. "She was troubled, as I said. A week ago she came to me upset. She said she'd learned something about Victor, something that made her doubt him. But she wouldn't say what. I thought it was nerves." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci. You have been most helpful." As Clara left, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. That vial. It's too suspicious." "Peut-être," Poirot said. "But it is not just the vial. It is the pattern, secrets, lies, and half-truths. The note, the vial, the earring, they are pieces of a larger deceit." Their next inquiry led them to Lionel Ashbourne, whose restless energy had grown more pronounced. Poirot found him in the billiard room, idly rolling a cue ball across the table. "Monsieur Lionel," Poirot said, producing the folded note. "This was found in the library. Do you recognize the writing?" Lionel's eyes flicked to the note, then away. "No," he said curtly. I don't spend much time in the library. Could be anyone's. And yet, Poirot said, your smile was faint. Bon. But tell me, monsieur, what brought you back to Blackthorn Manor after so many years? Was it truly just to see your sister? Lionel's jaw tightened. I wanted to make amends. Father and I. We had a falling out years ago. I thought it was time to come home. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. As Lionel left, Poirot turned to Hastings. He lies, mon ami. Not about everything, but about something. The library. It holds more than books. The day progressed with Poirot examining the servants' quarters, where the vial had been found. The cupboard, tucked in a narrow hallway, was used for cleaning supplies, but Poirot noted a faint trace of the same metallic pigment found in the garden and Eleanor's room. Voyez-vous, Hastings? He said, pointing to a smudge on the cupboard's edge. This pigment, it follows us. It is not paint, not cosmetic. It is something else. We must find its source. Back in the study, Poirot requested a word with Dr. Hugh Baxter, whose nervous demeanor had grown more pronounced. The doctor entered, adjusting his spectacles, his hands fidgeting. Doctor, Poirot said, you prescribed Mademoiselle Eleanor's tonics. Did you also supply Madame Whitmore's sleeping draught? Baxter nodded, his voice unsteady. Yes, I gave her a bottle a month ago. It's a mild sedative, quite common. But that vial you found, it's not the one I prescribed. Mine had a label, and did you notice anything unusual about Mademoiselle Eleanor's health? Poirot asked. Something that might explain her fears. Baxter hesitated. She was anxious, as I said. A week before her death, she asked me about poisons, how they might be detected. I thought it was curiosity, but now. He trailed off, his face pale. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Interessant. And did you see anyone near her room that night? No, Baxter said quickly. I was in my room reading. I heard nothing until the scream. As Baxter left, Hastings said, Poisons, Poirot? Do you think Eleanor was poisoned, not stabbed? No, mon ami, Poirot said. The dagger killed her. But her question about poisons, it suggests she feared something. Or someone. The afternoon brought a confrontation in the drawing room, where Sylvia Trent, overcome with emotion, broke down during tea. I can't stand it, she cried, her voice echoing. Eleanor knew something dangerous. She told me she'd found a letter, not the one you found, but another. She said it could. Lionel stared at the floor, while Clara's handkerchief trembled. Poirot's eyes moved from face to face, cataloging their reactions. That evening, Poirot and Hastings returned to the library, searching for the second letter Sylvia mentioned. They combed the shelves, finding nothing until Poirot noticed a loose floorboard near the dagger case. Lifting it, he found a small metal box, locked, but scratched as if recently forced open. Inside was a single sheet, torn at the edges, with a few scrawled words. He knows. Be careful. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered. Another warning. But for whom? And by whom? As night fell, the manor's shadows deepened, its secrets piling like leaves in the autumn wind. Poirot, his notebook filled with new questions, knew that the lies were surfacing, each one a step closer to the truth. The game was growing more complex, but Hercule Poirot was ready to unravel its next layer. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The 6th day at Blackthorn Manor was marked by a storm that rolled in from the Devon Hills, its thunder echoing through the estate like a warning. The relentless rain battered the leaded windows, trapping the guests in a claustrophobic dance of suspicion and grief. The discovery of the hidden note, "He knows, be careful," had deepened the mystery, and Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, sensed that the time had come for a crack in the facade of Blackthorn's inhabitants. Captain Hastings, his nerves frayed by the mounting tension, followed Poirot with a mix of admiration and unease, knowing that his friend was poised to uncover a pivotal truth. Poirot began the day in the study, his notebook open to a page filled with meticulous diagrams. A map of the manor's upper floor, a timeline of alibis, and a list of clues. The sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the torn fabric, and now the cryptic notes. He tapped his pen against the desk, his eyes distant but sharp. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "the killer has woven a web of deceit, but every web has a weak point. Today we will find it." Their first task was to confront Sylvia Trent about her emotional outburst the previous day. Poirot requested her presence in the conservatory, where the rain drummed against the glass roof, amplifying the tension. Sylvia entered, her face pale, her eyes red from sleeplessness. She clutched a shawl around her shoulders, her fingers trembling. "Mademoiselle Trent," Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing. "Yesterday you spoke of a letter Mademoiselle Eleanor hid in the library, one that could ruin everything. You were frightened, wouldn't let me read it, but she said it proved he wasn't who he claimed to be." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And where is this letter now, mademoiselle?" Sylvia's tears spilled over. "I don't know. She said she hid it in the library, but after she died, I looked and couldn't find it. That note you found. He knows. Be careful. It must be connected. I think she was warning someone or someone was warning her." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a chill. "Victor again," he muttered. "Everything points to him." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, Hastings. Mademoiselle, why did you not speak of this sooner?" Sylvia's voice broke. "I was scared. Eleanor was dead and I thought whoever wrote that note might come for me next." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Poirot's expression softened, but his mind was racing. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your courage has brought us closer to the truth." As Sylvia left, Poirot turned to Hastings. "Her fear, it is genuine, mon ami. But is it fear of Victor or of something else? We must search Victor's room." With Inspector Japp's permission, Poirot and Hastings entered Victor Langston's quarters, a sparsely furnished room at the end of the corridor. The search was methodical, Poirot's hands moving with precision over drawers, books, and clothing. In a suitcase beneath the bed, they found a locked leather portfolio. Poirot, using a small tool from his pocket, picked the lock with ease, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. Most were business correspondence, but one stood out, a letter in Eleanor's handwriting, dated a week before her death. Poirot read it aloud, his voice steady. "Victor, I cannot go through with it. I know the truth about you and Charles Vane. You thought I wouldn't find out, but I did. I cannot marry a man who lies. I will tell Father everything unless you leave." The letter was unsigned, as if unfinished. Hastings' eyes widened. Good Lord, Poirot. She was going to expose him. That's motive, plain as day. Poirot's mustache twitched. Too plain, perhaps. Why leave such a letter where it could be found? And where is the letter Sylvia mentioned? The one Eleanor found in Victor's room. Their search was interrupted by a commotion downstairs. Rushing to the drawing room, they found Mrs. Clara Whitmore in a state of collapse. Dr. Baxter kneeling beside her, a vial of smelling salts in hand. The other guests stood around, their faces a mix of concern and suspicion. She fainted, trusted the wrong person. But she wouldn't name them. I begged her to tell me, but she refused. And now she's gone. Her voice broke, and she began to sob. Poirot's gaze was steady, but his mind was racing. Merci, madame. Your honesty is a light in this darkness. As Baxter helped Clara to her room, Poirot turned to Hastings. The dam has broken, mon ami. The secrets, they are spilling out. Eleanor trusted the wrong person. But who? The afternoon brought another revelation. Japp, examining the manor's financial records at Poirot's request, discovered a discrepancy in Sir Reginald's accounts. A substantial sum, nearly £10,000, had been withdrawn from Eleanor's trust fund a month prior, authorized by Gerald Norton, the solicitor. When confronted, Norton was calm but evasive. It was for an investment, he said, his tone measured. Eleanor approved it, as did Sir Reginald. It was perfectly legal. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And this investment, what was its nature? Norton hesitated. A business venture. With Mr. Langston and his associate Charles Vane. It was meant to secure Eleanor's future. Intéressant, Poirot said. And where is this Monsieur Vane now? I don't know, Norton admitted. He left after his visit. I assumed he was in London. Poirot dismissed Norton, his mind turning over the new information. Money, mon ami, he said to Hastings. It is always a motive. But is it the only one? That evening, Poirot requested a private word with Lionel Ashburn, whose restless demeanor had grown more pronounced. They met in the billiard room where Lionel was idly chalking a cue. Monsieur Lionel, Poirot said, you have been away for many years, yet you returned just before this tragedy. Tell me, did you know of Eleanor's trust fund, or this investment with Monsieur Vane? Lionel's hand paused, his eyes narrowing. I knew Eleanor had money, but I didn't care about it. I came back for her, not for father's fortune. As for Vane, I met him once, briefly. Shifty sort, if you ask me. And your quarrel with your father, Poirot pressed. Was it resolved? Lionel's jaw tightened. Not entirely. He never forgave me for leaving. But that's got nothing to do with Eleanor's death. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Merci, monsieur. As night fell, the storm intensified, lightning illuminating the manor's somber halls. Poirot and Hastings sat in the study, the rain a story of betrayal, but not the one we are meant to see. He opened his notebook, sketching a new diagram, a web connecting each suspect to Eleanor, with lines for motive, opportunity, and secrets. The emotional turning point, Hastings. It reveals the heart of this crime. Someone trusted the wrong person, and that trust led to murder. Hercule Poirot will find who it was. The manor's clocks chimed midnight, their echoes mingling with the storm. The truth was closer, but still shrouded. And Poirot knew that the next move would require all his skill to uncover the killer's final mask. Chapter 9. The Trap. The seventh day at Blackthorn Manor was cloaked in a restless tension, the storm's aftermath leaving the air damp and heavy. The guests, worn by days of confinement and suspicion, moved through the manor with the wariness of hunted creatures. Hercule Poirot, his demeanor as precise as ever, sensed that the time had come to tighten the net around the killer. Captain Hastings, his nerves taut from the accumulating clues, followed Poirot with a mix of anticipation and dread, knowing his friend was about to spring a trap that would shake the manor's fragile equilibrium. Poirot began the morning in the study, his notebook open to a page dense with annotations. The sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the torn fabric, the cryptic notes, and now the financial discrepancies tied to Victor Langston and Charles Vane. He had sketched a timeline of the night of the murder, marking each suspect's alibi against the midnight scream, and a map of the manor's upper floor, noting the proximity of each room to Eleanor's. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "the killer believes he has outwitted us, but he has left too many threads. Today we will pull them, and the truth will unravel." Hastings, peering at the notebook, frowned. "You're planning something, aren't you, Poirot? A confrontation, like you did in that Nile case?" Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Précisément. The human heart, it cannot resist the pressure of scrutiny. We will gather them all, and Hercule Poirot will apply the psychological needle Poirot requested Inspector Japp's assistance in assembling the guests in the drawing room that evening. Japp, though skeptical of Poirot's theatrics, agreed, sensing that the case was nearing a turning point. "You'd better have something solid, Poirot," he said, adjusting his hat. "This lot's jumpy, and I don't want a riot on my hands." The drawing room, lit by chandeliers and warmed by a roaring fire, was a stage set for drama. The guests filed in, their faces a gallery of emotions. Sir Reginald's hollow grief, Victor's guarded composure, Lionel's restless agitation, Clara's fragile poise, Dr. Baxter's nervous fidgeting, Sylvia's tearful anxiety, and Norton's detached calm. Grayson, the butler, stood by the door, his stern presence a silent reminder of the manor's order. Poirot stood at the center, his small frame commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured. "A terrible crime has been committed in this house. Mademoiselle Eleanor Ashbourne was murdered, and the killer is among us. Hercule Poirot has observed, listened, and thought. And now I will share what the
Ignorant idea is together learn it fun and massive permitted to together was all day shy, but there's no cease. With that at our shit would be a stick sign ill, not a match square. By hiding the rearing is the grand Frank. How's it? The collision of us, but tell it. Legit though, but these but making into the every other random lumps of respect. If I'll hear infant, oh, do one this my way. Like follow me down the from Huller and they had just back working, which no loss and the feet in the dollars. She meant in the reason is it was just hot sale like a young did in which yeah I'm very even was good that judge I'll did put forth down there urgent sir what one dog around the minges ain't through pan it's a fail out take a bit fit out of the mill so very cheap yeah I built it on be wings is eating that me after had a team hip in teach lemons mayor's tongue doesn't even fill to get got well listen raw been the home that's marrying now the dead Steve that's though and I was here and doing the who can the mayor's light bit of truth but the hand that was there years lead leg when that hell the middle go whole end to the brahmin weed around the burden did ever bear up in the same chance me hell the governor from in the beast Mrs. Lim had such split the witch oh who need friends and my friends it's well he had it with shit that that weren't he I'm sick of fry drinking the guns there was and that agar record million of is it that's like thing you got okay when did you didn't yet he when this a little bit I just the fairly the bottom going to hell and the thing is vanilla to non this be cool من صدق إنه برنامج الفرار يا طويل صوي من الأنميات أبجوشن to the web club here up in the on alert as be sure I had to will leave can they older love for them I haven't I live for to hear this about me ninga may am good I would 0 to 3 and hanging a lid but it is not real the man that this chairman not a click and a clip with beloved yeah don't unprofessional actor and police them in mud I call it Mel never to aim keen fine with the because my tea I drain thing it's a little guy from new there had no we tell believe may am mad is it joining it hello set up unlike a voice person you just been which is from the early just like I don't know they live with ever not clay Evans we actually exist I mean you can share betray I mean that's with another shit entirely and finally wicked him to well they could just think about yeah but like this one and she I hold the it ain't come like no nigga this but he did what is Harris sound look be next yeah but good what about the call man the house up the radar it if for to the until the rear tip the pout twist I we why girl is there a working no the found looks one direct slinking like that that's the custom with fun and then wish that is not because now you can look like energy are if it can connect each other jibai and get them got like on my crush back and I about it this little mark here and the mom condition that hurt from love because you can't the rise but the other now hot the mother starts to fit the heel yeah be Lena as out wouldn't hike little ring it's great and to that what is that good sorry trip and honey that's a big and what that was a popular they aren't creating children that's to gray other and little not more than you man it's like sarcasm making call that have my well play some with this thing was I had with the middle max and it's never for the lie of the room anyway we must say it didn't personally know about dress could he locked the lid which meal have and in the here on mirror back no bully us now let you had her and we wait and after the elim nag you Jew has a child like we when even let him get with you like Marge we didn't just like well had always you know are this you hey you might have the destiny I mean are you threatening well the anywhere tell you may I've seen it I know as a win generally waiting to whatever and line or mad but hey you're of a chaplain why help you needing to look at the the rest may homes and those to metal when they am help out we get the help good and ersy and do another ran will come on you on it doesn't get fresh and like here make it the left little climb the just as her get her the like I'm can about the is right away fire like burn all the bird yeah enough feet moving and for a limb you dead moving burn this movement July the way stick a try yeah it's be like cuz they look as he mounted with words like clean ignition web starter with our large children I should up no written exits general mirrors are all that's neat mom beer living something this the first some thousand into her mind our love mister repeating just of move our ultra other reconciliations and good to game hey so ben I'm just the bad thing I mean getting just get the affiliate I yeah Ellen Street thanks to men late actually I'm who
changed everything. I begged her to go to her father, but she wouldn't. Victor sprang to his feet. That's enough! I didn't kill her. Yes, we argued, but it was about money, not secrets. She thought I was pushing her into that investment with Vane, but I was trying to secure our future. Sir Reginald, silent until now, rose, his voice shaking. You used her, Langston. That trust fund money. It was her inheritance, not yours to gamble. Poirot's voice cut through the chaos. Silence! The truth is close, but it is not yet clear. Monsieur Norton, you authorized the withdrawal of £10,000. Was it truly for Mademoiselle Eleanor's benefit? Norton's calm wavered. It was legal, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald approved it. I acted as instructed. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, the money is gone, and Monsieur Vane is nowhere to be found. Someone in this room knows more. I ask you now, speak, or the little gray cells will speak for you. The room fell silent. The only sound the crackle of the fire and the distant rumble of thunder. Then, unexpectedly, Dr. Baxter stood, his face ashen. I can't keep silent any longer, he stammered. Eleanor came to me a week ago, asking about poisons. She said she'd found something, a document, that could ruin someone. She wouldn't say who, but she was terrified. I told her to go to the police, but she said she needed proof first. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And where is this document, Doctor? Baxter shook his head. I don't know. She said she hid it, but not where. I swear that's all I know. The confession sent a ripple through the room. Victor's fists clenched, Lionel's eyes darted to the door, and Clara's handkerchief fell to the floor. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. Merci, Doctor. You have opened a door. The document, the earring, the pigment, the notes. They are pieces of a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot is close to solving it. I ask you all to reflect tonight. The truth cannot hide forever. As the guests dispersed, their faces pale and shaken, Hastings whispered, Good Lord, Poirot, you've rattled them. Baxter's confession, do you believe him? Poirot's smile was faint. He speaks truth, but not all of it. The trap, it has been set, mon ami. The killer feels the pressure, and soon he will make a mistake. The manor settled into an uneasy silence. The storm outside, a mirror drama, was at hand. Hercule Poirot, his appearance as immaculate as ever, stood before them, his small frame radiating an authority that silenced the room. Captain Hastings at his side felt his heart race, knowing that Poirot's little gray cells had woven the disparate threads of the mystery into a tapestry of truth. The drawing room was lit by the soft glow of chandeliers, the fire crackling in the hearth a stark contrast to the tension that hung like a fog. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat rigidly in his high-backed chair, his face etched with grief and exhaustion. Victor Langston stood by the window, his sharp features taut, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Lionel Ashbourne leaned against the mantel, his restless energy subdued but not extinguished. Mrs. Clara Whitmore, her mourning black a symbol of her loss, clutched her handkerchief, her eyes red-rimmed. Dr. Hugh Baxter fidgeted with his spectacles, his nervousness palpable, while Sylvia Trent, pale and tearful, sat close to Gerald Norton, whose solicitor's calm seemed to waver. Grayson, the butler, stood by the door, his stern presence a silent sentinel. Poirot stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, we have reached the moment of truth. Mademoiselle Eleanor Ashbourne was murdered in this house, and the killer is among us. Hercule Poirot has observed, listened, and thought, and now, with the aid of the little gray cells, I will reveal what happened that fateful night. A murmur rippled through the room, but Poirot's raised hand silenced it. Let us begin with the crime. At midnight, a scream woke the house. Mademoiselle Eleanor was found in her room, stabbed with a dagger from the library collection. The window was open, a smudge of mud with metallic pigment on the sill. Notes were found. I know what you did. He knows. Be careful. A sapphire earring was missing, a receipt hidden, a torn fabric caught on a rose bush, and money missing from Eleanor's trust fund. These are not accidents, but pieces of a deliberate plan. Poirot's eyes swept the room, noting each reaction. The obvious suspect is Monsieur Victor Langston. A letter in Eleanor's hand accused him of deceit with Charles Vane, and she threatened to expose him. The CV letter warned her against him. The money from her trust fund, withdrawn for an investment with Vane, suggests a motive. Monsieur Langston, you had no alibi, and your room held incriminating evidence. Is this not so? Victor's face paled, his voice sharp. I loved Eleanor. Yes. We argued about the investment, but I didn't kill her. That letter was a misunderstanding. Eleanor's inheritance? or her engagement. Lionel's eyes flashed. I came back for her, not for money. I was in the billiard room, not the library, when she died. Poirot turned to Clara. Madame Whitmore, you loved Eleanor as a daughter. Yet a vial of sleeping draught, not yours, was found in the servants' quarters. Were you hiding something? Perhaps a knowledge of Eleanor's fears? Clara's hands trembled. I told you everything. I took my draught and slept. I knew nothing of her death until the scream. Poirot's gaze moved to Dr. Baxter. Doctor, you spoke of Eleanor's questions about poisons, her fear of a document. Did you withhold aid, knowing she was in danger? Baxter's spectacles slipped, his voice unsteady. I urged her to go to the police. I didn't know what she'd found. Sylvia Trent sobbed softly, and Poirot addressed her. Mademoiselle, you saw a shadow in the garden, and you spoke of Eleanor's fear of a letter. Why did you not act? I was scared, Sylvia cried. I thought she'd handle it herself. Finally, Poirot turned to Norton. Monsieur Norton, you authorized the withdrawal of Eleanor's money. Did you know more about Charles Vane than you admitted? Norton's calm faltered. I acted on Sir Reginald's orders. I knew nothing of Vane's dealings. Poirot paused, letting the tension build. Eh bien, let us reconstruct the night. Eleanor was troubled, having found a document in Victor's room. A letter, perhaps, revealing his dealings with Charles Vane, a man with a dubious reputation. She wrote to Victor, threatening to expose him. But she also found another letter, hidden in the library, warning her of danger. She hid a receipt for her earring, perhaps as a clue, and asked Dr. Baxter about poisons, fearing betrayal. He paced slowly, his voice hypnotic. The killer knew of her discovery. At midnight they entered her room, using a key or tool to scratch the lock. The dagger, taken from the library, was chosen for its significance, a symbol of betrayal. The window was opened, mud with metallic pigment smeared on the sill to suggest an intruder. The killer stabbed Eleanor, then fled, leaving the note, "He knows. Be careful," to confuse us. Poirot stopped, his eyes gleaming. But the killer made mistakes. The metallic pigment, it is not paint, but a chemical used in mining. A residue from South America, carried by Monsieur Lionel Ashbourne. Lionel leapt to his feet. That's absurd. I haven't touched mining in years. Poirot raised a hand. Patience. The pig earring, its sapphire glinting. Lionel's face drained of color. I found it in the library, after Eleanor died. I didn't know what to do with it. Poirot's voice was relentless. You lie, monsieur. You returned to Blackthorn Manor not for love, but for revenge. Your father disowned you, favoring Eleanor. You learned of her engagement, her trust fund, and Victor's scheme with Vane. You saw a chance to ruin them both. You wrote the CV letter, forging Vane's initials to cast suspicion on Victor. You stole the dagger, knowing its significance to the family. You entered Eleanor's room, killed her, and planted the mud to suggest an outsider. But the pigment, it betrayed you. A residue from your mining days, clinging to your shoes. Lionel's voice rose, desperate. No, I loved Eleanor. I wouldn't harm her. Poirot's eyes were unyielding. You loved her, yes, but you hated what she represented, the family that rejected you. The note in the library, "He knows. Be careful," was your warning to yourself, fearing discovery. But Hercule Poirot sees all. Sir Reginald stood, his voice trembling. "Lionel, is this true?" Lionel's defiance crumbled, his shoulders sagging. I didn't mean to kill her. I went to talk, to beg her to leave Victor. She laughed, said I was jealous. I lost control. The dagger was in my hand." He collapsed, sobbing. Jap signaled the constables who moved to restrain Lionel. The room erupted in murmurs, Sylvia's sobs mingling with Clara's gasps. Poirot remained calm, his work complete. As Lionel was led away, Hastings whispered, "Good Lord, Poirot, how did you know?" Poirot's smile was faint. "The little grey cells, mon ami. The pigment, the earring, the notes. They told a story of jealousy and betrayal. Lionel's lies could not hide the truth." The manor fell silent, the weight of justice settling over it. Poirot, his task done, prepared to leave, knowing the truth had been uncovered, but at a cost to all who remained. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The 9th day at Blackthorn Manor dawned with a quiet that felt almost unnatural after the storm of revelations the previous evening. The arrest of Lionel Ashbourne had left the household in a state of stunned silence, as if the very walls of the ancient estate were exhaling after holding their breath for too long. The guests, their faces drawn with a mix of relief and sorrow, moved through the manor with a new hesitancy, as if unsure how to navigate a world where the truth had been laid bare. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, remained a figure of serene detachment. The fire crackled softly, but its warmth did little to dispel the chill of grief that hung over the group. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat slumped in his chair, his hawkish face etched with a pain that went beyond the loss of his daughter to the betrayal of his son. Victor Langston, cleared of suspicion but stripped of his charm, stood by the window, staring at the garden as if searching for answers. Mrs. Clara Whitmore, her mourning black now a symbol of double loss, clutched her handkerchief, her eyes distant. Dr. Hugh Baxter, his nervous energy subdued, adjusted his spectacles absently, while Sylvia Trent, her tears spent, sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Gerald Norton, the solicitor, maintained his professional composure, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of regret. Poirot, standing by the mantel, addressed the group with a voice that was both gentle and authoritative. "Mesdames et messieurs, the tragedy of Mademoiselle Eleanor's death has been resolved, but the wounds it leaves are deep. Hercule Poirot has uncovered the truth, not through luck or chance, but through the methodical use of the little grey cells. I wish to share with you now the philosophy that guides such work, for it is in understanding the human heart that we find justice." Hastings, seated near the door, leaned forward, eager to hear Poirot's reflections. He knew his friend often used these moments to impart a deeper wisdom, a way of making sense of the chaos of human motives. Poirot's eyes swept the room, lingering on each face. "The crime, it is not merely an act of violence, but a window into the soul. Mademoiselle Eleanor was betrayed by one she loved, her brother Lionel, whose jealousy and resentment festered in the shadows of his exile. The clues, the sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the hidden notes, were not mere objects but echoes of his inner turmoil. The earring, taken from Eleanor's room, was a symbol of her privileged place in the family, a place Lionel coveted. The pigment, a residue of his past in mining, betrayed his presence at the scene. The notes, written in his hand, were cries of his own guilt and fear. Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "Why, Monsieur Poirot? Why did he do it? Eleanor loved him." Poirot's expression softened. "Monsieur, the heart is a complex thing. Lionel loved his sister, oui, but he also hated what she represented, the family that rejected him, the inheritance he could not claim. when he learned of her engagement to Monsieur Langston and the money tied to Charles Vane. He saw a chance to reclaim his place, not by love, but by destruction. He forged the CV letter to cast suspicion on Victor, stole the dagger to wound your family's legacy, and Our future Poirot nodded. Oui, Monsieur Langston. You are not the killer, but you are not without fault. Your secrecy about Charles Vane, your ambition, it planted seeds of doubt in Eleanor's heart. She found a letter, perhaps one you thought hidden, that revealed your dealings. She feared betrayal, and that fear led her to confront Lionel, sealing her fate. Sylvia's voice trembled. I should have done more. If I'd told someone about her fears. Poirot raised a hand. Do not blame yourself, mademoiselle. The human heart, it guards its secrets fiercely. You acted with loyalty, but Eleanor chose to face her danger alone. Clara's eyes filled with tears. And I, Monsieur Poirot? I loved her like my own. Could I have saved her? Poirot's gaze was kind but firm. Madam, you gave her love, but no one can force another to reveal their heart. The vial of sleeping draught, it was not yours, but a distraction planted by Lionel to muddy the waters. You are innocent of her death. Dr. Baxter spoke softly. She asked me about poisons. I should have known she was in danger. You advised her well, Doctor, Poirot said. But she was determined to find proof. The document she sought, it was likely destroyed by Lionel, fearing exposure. Norton, silent until now, cleared his throat. And the money, Monsieur Poirot? I acted legally, but I feel the weight of it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You followed orders, Monsieur Norton, but you knew of Vane's reputation. Your silence, it contributed to the tragedy, though it does not make you a killer. The room fell silent, each person grappling with their role in the web of deceit. Poirot continued, his voice reflective. The lesson, mes amis, is this. Truth is a fragile thing, easily buried beneath lies, ambition, and fear. But it cannot remain hidden forever. The little gray cells, they see what the heart conceals. They see the contradiction, the hesitation, the detail that does not fit. And in those details, justice is found. Hastings, moved by Poirot's words, whispered, You make it sound so simple, Poirot. But it's a heavy burden, isn't it? Poirot's smile was faint. Oui, mon ami. To see the truth is to carry its weight. The truth is revealed, and Hercule Poirot must move on. There are other mysteries, other hearts in need of understanding. That afternoon, Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave. As they packed in their rooms, Hastings said, It's a grim business, Poirot. Lionel's betrayal, Eleanor's death. It's also senseless. Poirot closed his suitcase with a snap. Mon ami, sense is what we bring to the chaos. The human heart, it is capable of great love and great cruelty. To understand it is to bring order to the world. They left Blackthorn Manor as the sun dipped below the hills, the estate's silhouette a somber reminder of the tragedy within. The train to London awaited, and Poirot, his mind already turning to new challenges, sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the passing countryside. Hastings, beside him, felt a quiet pride in his friend's genius, but also a sadness for the broken family they left behind. As the train rattled on, Poirot opened his notebook one last time, adding a final note. Blackthorn Manor. Truth found in the heart's shadows. He closed it with a sigh, his work complete, and turned to Hastings with a faint smile. Eh bien, mon ami. The little gray cells, they rest for now, but not for long. The manor faded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, and Hercule Poirot, the master of deduction, moved on to the next mystery, ready to unravel the complexities of the human heart once more. Chapter 12. The Unseen Shadow. The train carrying Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings back to London rattled through the countryside, the clatter of wheels a soothing counterpoint to the turmoil left behind at Blackthorn Manor. Yet, as the Devon hills faded into the distance, Poirot's serene demeanor masked a lingering unease. The case of Eleanor Ashbourne's murder had been resolved, Lionel's confession sealing his guilt. But a faint whisper in Poirot's mind, his little gray cells at work, suggested that the tapestry of truth was not yet complete. Hastings, seated opposite, noticed his friend's preoccupied expression, the slight furrow in his brow an uncommon sign of disquiet. Poirot, Hastings ventured, you seem troubled. Lionel confessed. The clues fit. Surely the case is closed. Poirot's eyes, sharp and green, met his friend's. Mon cher Hastings, the confession. It is a neat bow on the package, oui? But Hercule Poirot does not trust neatness. There is a shadow in this case, unseen, and I fear we have not yet illuminated it. Hastings frowned, puzzled. Must think, Hastings. For the little gray cells, they are not satisfied. Back in London, Poirot wasted no time. He dispatched a telegram to Inspector Japp, requesting a follow-up on Charles Vane, the mysterious associate of Victor Langston, whose name had surfaced repeatedly, but whose presence remained elusive. Poirot also requested access to Lionel's belongings, particularly any items from his time in South America. We must confirm the source of the metallic pigment, he told Hastings. If it is indeed from Lionel's mining days, it strengthens the case. If not, we have overlooked something vital. While awaiting Japp's response, Poirot and Hastings visited the London jeweler named on the receipt for Eleanor's sapphire earring. The shop, a discreet establishment in Mayfair, was tended by an elderly jeweler with a meticulous air that Poirot clearly admired. Monsieur, Poirot began, producing the receipt. This concerns a sapphire earring repaired for Mademoiselle Eleanor Ashbourne. Can you tell us about it? The jeweler adjusted his glasses, examining the receipt. Yes, I recall this. Miss Ashbourne brought in one earring for repair, a loose setting. She was most particular about it, said it was a family heirloom. I returned it to her 3 weeks ago. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And did she mention why only one earring was brought? The jeweler shook his head. No, but she seemed anxious. She asked if we kept records of repairs, and when I said yes, she requested discretion. Intéressant, Poirot murmured. Merci, monsieur. As they left the shop, Hastings said, She was hiding something, Poirot. But if Lionel took the earring, why was it sent for repair? Poirot's expression was grave. That is the question, mon ami. The earring, it is a thread that does not yet fit. We must pull it gently. That evening, Jap arrived at their flat with news. Your hunch about Vane paid off, Poirot, he said, tossing a file onto the table. Charles Vane's a slippery one, known in financial circles for shady deals. He's been in hiding since the murder, but we've traced him to a boarding house in Bristol. And the pigment? The lab says it's a rare compound, used in South American mines, but also in certain industrial paints here in England. Doesn't prove Lionel's innocence, but it widens the net. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And Lionel's belongings? Nothing new, Jap admitted. His tobacco tin had the earring, and his shoes had traces of the pigment. But I'll grant you, it's all a bit too tidy. Poirot nodded. Cramped room, surrounded by papers and a half-packed suitcase. His eyes darted to the door as Jap introduced Poirot. Monsieur Vane, Poirot began, his voice calm but piercing. You were a guest at Blackthorn Manor a month ago. You knew Mademoiselle Eleanor Ashbourne and Monsieur Victor Langston. Tell me, what was your business with them? Vane's hands trembled, but his voice was defiant. I'm a businessman, nothing more. Victor and I had a deal, an investment. Eleanor's money was part of it, but it was all above board. Poirot's mustache twitched. And yet, a letter signed C.V. warned Mademoiselle Eleanor against Victor. Did you write it? Vane's face paled. No, I never wrote to her. If there's a letter with my initials, it's a forgery. Someone's trying to frame me. And the investment? Poirot pressed. £10,000 from Eleanor's trust fund. Gone. Where is it? Vane's eyes darted away. It didn't pan out. The market crashed. I told Victor we'd recover it, but then Eleanor died, and I thought it best to lie low. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. You knew of her death, yet you fled. Why? I was scared, Vane admitted. Victor said she was asking questions, digging into our business. I thought she might have told someone, and then she was dead. I didn't want to be next. Jap crossed his arms. Sounds like you've got plenty to hide, Vane. Poirot raised a hand. Patience, Inspector. Monsieur Vane. Did you ever handle industrial pigments, perhaps in your dealings? Vane frowned, confused. Pigments? No. I deal in stocks, not chemicals. As they left, Hastings whispered, He's hiding something, Poirot, but he doesn't strike me as the killer. No, Poirot agreed. But he is a piece of the puzzle. The letter, the money, the pigment. They point to a deeper deception. Back in London, Poirot spent the evening poring over his notes, his mind wrestling with the inconsistencies. The sapphire earring, sent for repair yet found in Lionel's room. The metallic pigment, linked to mining but also to English industry. The forged CV letter, designed to mislead. There is another hand at work, Poirot murmured. Lionel confessed, but he is not the whole story. Hastings, exhausted, said, You think someone else was involved? But who? Everyone's alibis held, more or less. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The alibis, they are the key, mon ami. They are too perfect, like a clock wound too tightly. We must return to Blackthorn Manor. There is one more thread to pull. The next began. You authorized the withdrawal of Eleanor's money. You knew of Charles Vane's reputation, yet you acted. Why? Norton's face remained impassive. I followed Sir Reginald's instructions. It was legal, Poirot's voice sharpened. And the pigment, monsieur? It was found in the servants' quarters, where you passed the night of the murder, reviewing documents. You have a background in chemistry, oui? Before law, you studied at Oxford. Norton's eyes flickered. That was years ago. I know nothing of pigments. Poirot produced the torn fabric from the rose bush. This fabric, it matches a coat in your wardrobe, does it not? And the scratch on the library case. You opened it, took the dagger, and framed Lionel, knowing his history would make him suspect. Norton's composure cracked, his voice rising. That's preposterous. I had no motive. Poirot's smile was cold. Your motive, monsieur, was greed. You and Vane conspired to steal Eleanor's money. She discovered your plan, found a letter proving your involvement. You killed her to silence her, planting the earring and pigment to frame Lionel, forging the CV letter to mislead us. Norton collapsed, his confession spilling out. I didn't mean for it to go so far. Eleanor was going to ruin everything. I acted alone. Vane didn't know. As Japp arrested Norton, Hastings whispered, Good Lord, Poirot. You saw what we all missed. Poirot's eyes were somber. The truth, mon ami, it hides in the shadows. But Hercule Poirot brings it to light. The manor's secrets were finally laid bare, and Poirot, his work done, prepared to leave once more, the unseen shadow vanquished by his relentless logic. Chapter 13. The Hidden Motive. The 10th day since Eleanor Ashbourne's murder found Blackthorn Manor steeped in a fragile calm. The kind that follows a storm when the air is clear but the ground still trembles. Gerald Norton's confession had shattered the illusion of closure brought by Lionel's arrest, revealing a deeper layer of deceit that had ensnared the household. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous mind still probing the edges of the case, sensed that one final piece of the puzzle remained elusive. Captain Hastings, though awed by Poirot's unraveling of Norton's guilt, felt a nagging unease, as if the manor's shadow still held secrets yet to be uncovered. The morning was spent in the library, where Poirot sat at a polished table, his notebook open to a page dense with annotations. The sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the forged CV letter, the torn fabric, and now Norton's confession of greed and murder. Hastings, pacing nearby, glanced at the empty dagger case. His friends. Mon cher Hastings, the case is solved. Oui. But not complete. Norton killed Mademoiselle Eleanor to protect his scheme with Charles Vane, framing Lionel with the earring and pigment. Yet there is a motive beneath the motive. A hidden thread that pulls at the little gray cells. Why did Eleanor suspect Norton? And what drove her to confront danger alone? Hastings frowned. She found a letter, you said, one proving Norton's involvement with Vane. That's what set this off. Précisément, Poirot said, tapping his pen against the notebook. But how did she find it? And why was it in Victor's room, as Mademoiselle Trent claimed? The letter. It is the key to the hidden motive. And we must find it. Determined to tie up this final loose end, Poirot requested a meeting with Sylvia Trent, whose emotional revelations had been pivotal. They met in the conservatory, where the scent of roses mingled with the damp air, a faint echo of the storm that had passed. Sylvia entered, her face pale but composed, her hands no longer trembling but clasped tightly. Mademoiselle Trent, Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing. You told us Mademoiselle Eleanor found a letter in Monsieur Langston's room, one that proved his deceit with Charles Vane. Yet Norton confessed to the murder. not Victor. Can you tell us more about this letter, its contents, its hiding place? Sylvia's eyes widened, then dropped to her hands. I only know what Eleanor told me. She said she found it in a book in Victor's room, a week before she died. She wouldn't let me read it, but she said it mentioned Vane and a plan to take her money. She was so upset, Monsieur Poirot. She said she couldn't marry Victor if he was dishonest. Poirot's mustache twitched. And this book? Do you recall its title, or where it was kept? Sylvia hesitated, her fingers twisting. She didn't say the title, but she mentioned it was on his desk, hidden in plain sight. I looked after her death, but I couldn't find it. Merci, mademoiselle, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. You have given us a vital clue. After Sylvia left, Poirot and Hastings returned to Victor's room, which had been searched, but not thoroughly enough in Poirot's estimation. The desk, a heavy mahogany piece, held a few books, novels, a financial ledger, and a worn copy of The Merchant of Venice. Poirot's fingers paused over the Shakespeare, its spine slightly askew. He opened it, revealing more. The handwriting. It is not Norton's, nor Vane's, nor Victor's. It is a woman's hand, delicate and precise. We have overlooked a player in this game. Determined to trace this new lead, Poirot summoned Mrs. Clara Whitmore to the library. Her mourning black seemed to weigh her down, her face pale but composed. Madame, Poirot said, holding up the letter. This was found in Monsieur Langston's room, hidden in a book. It speaks of a plan to steal Mademoiselle Eleanor's money, involving Norton and Vane. Do you recognize the writing? Clara's eyes flickered, her hands clutching her handkerchief. I don't know, Monsieur Poirot. I never saw such a letter. Poirot's voice sharpened. Madame, you loved Eleanor as a daughter, yet you knew she was troubled. Did you suspect Norton's deceit? Did you write this letter to warn her, or to manipulate events? Clara's composure cracked, her voice trembling. I didn't write it, but I knew Eleanor was digging into Victor's affairs. She came to me frantic, saying she'd found proof of a scheme. I told her to be careful, but I didn't know it was Norton. I thought it was Victor. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And yet you said nothing to Sir Reginald or the police. Why? Clara's tears spilled over. I was afraid. Eleanor begged me to keep quiet until she had proof. I thought I was protecting her. Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. To Hastings, he said, her fear is genuine, but her silence, it cost Eleanor dearly. The letter's author remains our quarry. That afternoon, Poirot conferred with Inspector Japp, who had returned to the manor to finalize Norton's arrest. This letter, Poirot said, showing it to Japp. It is the hidden motive. A woman wrote it, not to warn, but to orchestrate. I suspect Mademoiselle Sylvia Trent. Japp's eyes widened. Sylvia? But she's been a wreck, crying over Eleanor's death. Précisément, Poirot said. Her tears, they are a mask. She knew of the scheme, perhaps through Eleanor, and wrote this letter to push her friend toward confrontation, knowing it would lead to disaster. Her motive? Jealousy, perhaps, or a desire to control the outcome. They summoned Sylvia again, this time to the drawing room, where the other guests were absent. Her face was pale, her eyes wary. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, holding up the letter. This is your handwriting, is it not? You wrote to Charles Vane, planting the letter for Eleanor to find, knowing it would drive a wedge between her and Victor. Cold, your actions led to her death. You gave Norton the opportunity to act, knowing Eleanor would confront him. Sylvia collapsed, sobbing. I didn't know he'd kill her. I thought she'd just leave Victor. Jap, shaking his head, said, That's enough for an accessory charge, Poirot. We'll take her in. As Sylvia was led away, Hastings whispered, Good Lord, Poirot. She didn't mean to kill, but she set it all in motion. Poirot's eyes were somber. Oui, mon ami. The hidden motive was not greed alone, but jealousy and manipulation. Sylvia's love for Eleanor twisted into betrayal, and Norton seized the chance to silence her. The manor's silence deepened, its secrets finally exposed. Poirot, his notebook closed, prepared to leave, knowing the hidden motive had been brought to light, but at the cost of another soul's ruin. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The 11th day since Eleanor Ashbourne's murder found Blackthorn Manor cloaked in a somber stillness, as if the ancient estate were mourning the unraveling of its secrets. Sylvia Trent's confession as an unwitting catalyst in the tragedy had cast a new light on the case, revealing a web of jealousy and manipulation that had ensnared Eleanor's fate. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous mind ever alert, sensed that the final threads of the mystery were within reach, ready to be woven into a complete tapestry of truth. Captain Hastings, though reeling from the rapid succession of revelations, followed his friend with a mix of awe and exhaustion, knowing Poirot was determined to leave no detail unresolved. The morning was spent in the manor's library, where Poirot sat at a polished table, his notebook open to a page dense with annotations. The sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the forged CV letter, the torn fabric, Norton's greed, and Sylvia's betrayal. He had added a new diagram, a web linking each suspect's motives and actions, with Sylvia's confession as the latest knot. Mon ami, Poirot said to Hastings, the case is nearly closed, but there are threads that dangle still. We must tie them, or the little gray cells will not rest. Hastings, peering at the notebook, frowned. Sylvia's confession explains why Eleanor was so troubled, but what about the document she feared? The one Dr. Baxter mentioned. She said it could ruin someone. Was it the letter Sylvia wrote, or something else? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Précisément, Hastings. The document. It is the final piece. Eleanor found something that threatened not just Victor, but Norton, and perhaps others. We must find it, or the truth will remain incomplete. Near the window, behind the row of poetry volumes, Hastings found a small locked diary, its leather cover worn but intact. Poirot, look at this, he exclaimed, holding it up. Poirot's mustache twitched as he took the diary, noting a faint scratch on the lock, similar to those on the dagger case and Eleanor's door. Using his small tool, he opened it, revealing pages filled with Eleanor's delicate handwriting. The final entry, dated 2 days before her death, was chilling. I found the contract in Norton's study. It proves he in vain planned to steal my trust fund, using Victor as a front. I confronted Norton, but he laughed it off. I'm scared. He knows I know. I hid this diary in case something happens. If I'm gone, tell Father Hastings' eyes widened. Good Lord, Poirot! This is the document. She found proof of Norton's scheme. That's why he killed her. Poirot nodded, his expression grave. Oui, mon ami. This diary, it is the heart of the motive. Eleanor discovered Norton's betrayal, and he silenced her before she could tell Sir Reginald. Sylvia's letter was the spark, but this diary was the fire. They took the diary to Japp, who was preparing to depart with Norton and Sylvia in custody. "This clinches it, Poirot," Japp said, scanning the entry. "Norton's motive is clear now. Eleanor was about to expose him. Sylvia's meddling pushed her to act, but Norton struck the fatal blow." Poirot's voice was steady. "And the metallic pigment, Inspector. It was not just from Lionel's shoes, but from Norton's study. He used it in his chemical experiments, a fact he concealed. The earring, too, was planted to frame Lionel, but it was Eleanor's diary that held the truth. Determined to confront the remaining guests, Poirot requested a final gathering in the drawing room. Sir Reginald, Victor, Clara, and Dr. Baxter assembled, their faces heavy with the weight of the past days. Sylvia and Norton were absent, their fates sealed by their confessions. Poirot stood at the center, the diary in his hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "the tragedy of Mademoiselle Eleanor is now fully revealed. This diary, hidden in the library, proves she uncovered a plot by Gerald Norton and Charles Vane to steal her trust fund, using Monsieur Langston as an unwitting pawn. Mademoiselle Trent, in her jealousy, planted a letter to drive Eleanor from Victor. But it led her to confront Norton, who killed her to protect his scheme. The sapphire earring, the pigment, the forged notes, all were distractions. But this diary is the truth." Sir, face pale, spoke softly. "I should have seen it. I trusted Norton, thought he was helping us." Clara's tears fell. "And I failed her, keeping silent when she needed me." Dr. Baxter adjusted his spectacles, his voice low. "I should have acted when she asked about poisons. I thought it was idle talk." Poirot raised a hand. "Do not blame yourselves. The human heart, it is complex, and Eleanor chose to face her fears alone. Hercule Poirot has brought the truth to light, and justice will follow." As the guests dispersed, Japp approached Poirot. "You've outdone yourself, Poirot. This diary, it's the nail in Norton's coffin. Sylvia's in for a lighter sentence, but she'll carry this guilt forever." Poirot nodded, his expression somber. "Oui, Inspector. The truth, it heals, but it also wounds." That afternoon, Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave Blackthorn Manor for the final time. As they packed, Hastings said, "It's a grim business, Poirot. Eleanor's bravery, Sylvia's jealousy, Norton's greed. It's all so tangled." Poirot closed his suitcase with a snap. "Mon ami, the world is a tangle of motives, but the little gray cells, they bring order. Eleanor's diary was the final thread, and now the tapestry is complete." They boarded the train to London, the manor's silhouette fading into the mist. Poirot opened his notebook, adding a final note. "Blackthorn Manor. The truth lies in courage and betrayal." He closed it with a sigh, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Eh bien, Hastings, the case is closed. But the heart, it continues to speak." The train rattled on, carrying them away from the manor's shadows. But Poirot knew that the echoes of this case would linger, a reminder of the delicate balance between truth and human frailty. Chapter 15. The Departure. The 12th day since Eleanor Ashbourne's murder marked the final chapter of the tragedy that had unfolded within the ancient walls of Blackthorn Manor. The air was crisp, the Devon countryside bathed in a pale autumn light that seemed to cleanse the estate of its recent darkness. The arrests of Gerald Norton and Sylvia Trent had brought a somber resolution, but the manor's inhabitants remained haunted by the revelations of betrayal and loss. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, prepared to leave, his meticulous mind at peace with the truth uncovered, though his heart carried the weight of the human cost. Captain Hastings, ever his faithful companion, he said, his voice hoarse, "I cannot thank you enough. You've given us the truth, though it has broken what little we had left. My daughter, my son," he faltered, his eyes glistening. Poirot bowed slightly, his expression solemn. "Monsieur, the truth. It is a bitter medicine, but it heals in time. Mademoiselle Eleanor was brave, and her courage has brought justice. Hercule Poirot is honored to have served her memory. Victor Langston, his usual charm replaced by a quiet intensity, stepped forward. I was a fool, Monsieur Poirot, trusting Norton, letting Eleanor doubt me. If I'd been honest, perhaps she'd still be here." Poirot's eyes were kind but firm. "Monsieur Langston, you were deceived, as was she. But the heart, it learns from its mistakes. Live honestly, and honor her memory." Clara Whitmore, her mourning black a stark contrast to her pale face, clutched her handkerchief. "I failed her, Monsieur Poirot. I should have spoken when she came to me." "Madame," Poirot said gently, "you loved her, and that love was her strength. Do not carry guilt for what you could not foresee." Dr. Baxter, adjusting his spectacles, spoke softly. "I'll never forgive myself for not acting on her questions about poisons. You've shown me what I missed, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot nodded. "Doctor, you acted as you thought best. The truth. It is a light that reveals all, even our own shortcomings." Inspector Japp, who had overseen the final formalities, joined them, his brisk manner softened by the case's resolution. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "Norton's locked up. Sylvia's facing charges, and that diary clinched it. I don't know how you see what we all miss." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Mon cher Japp, it is the little gray cells. They see the detail, the contradiction, the human heart. Without them, Hercule Poirot is nothing." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a swell of pride for his friend's genius, tempered by sadness for the broken family they were leaving behind. "It's a grim business, Poirot," he said as they stepped into the courtyard, where a car waited to take them to the station. Eleanor's courage, Sylvia's jealousy, Norton's greed. It's all so senseless. Poirot paused, his eyes scanning the manor's ivy-clad facade one last time. "Mon ami, sense is what we bring to the chaos, the human heart. It is capable of great love and great cruelty. Eleanor sought the truth, and though it cost her life, it has set others free. That is the order we seek." The car wound through the Devon hills, the manor fading into the mist. On the train to London, Poirot sat in silence, his notebook closed. You saw the unseen shadow. Norton, Sylvia, the diary. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, Hastings. The truth. It hides in the shadows, but it cannot resist the light of logic. The sapphire earring, the metallic pigment, the forged letter, the diary. They were threads in a tapestry of betrayal. Sylvia's jealousy set the stage. Norton's greed struck the blow, and Eleanor's courage tied them together. He opened his notebook one last time, adding a final entry. Blackthorn Manor. truth woven from courage, betrayal, and the unrelenting pursuit of order. Closing it with a snap, he leaned back, his expression serene. Eh bien, mon ami. The case is closed, and Hercule Poirot is content. But the world, it is full of mysteries, and we must be ready for the next. The train rattled on, carrying them toward London, and the promise of new puzzles. Blackthorn Manor, with its secrets and sorrows, receded into memory, a testament to the power of Poirot's little gray cells and the enduring quest for truth in a world of shadows. As they neared the city, Hastings glanced at Poirot, who was gazing out the window, his face calm but alert. "What's next, old boy?" he asked. Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "The next mystery, Hastings. It waits, as always, for Hercule Poirot to unravel its secrets." And with that, the train carried them forward, into the unknown, where the little gray cells would once again find their purpose.